It's a blow against consumer protections and choices in your internet connection. There's 56 million households that only have one choice of ISP, and these regulations were meant to protect people like that. If your ISP does something you don't like, you should have the ability to go to a different ISP, but when you only have one choice in your neighborhood, you don't have that. And that's probably a good reason to have these regulations.
What happens now? What's the future going to be like here? What are some things we might see immediately and then in the long term?
So we won't immediately see a big price hike on your internet bill. More than likely, your internet bill is going to start looking like your cable bill, and as much excitement as that brings to people. So you might have your standard package today, and your speeds will never increase. But if you want faster speeds next year and the year after that, you might need their platinum tier, and you'll have to pay extra if you want Netflix. We also might see the disappearance of unlimited internet. So we take it for granted that at our homes, we can use as much internet as we want. That might be going away, and there will be data caps just like on our wireless data plans.
There are some out there who are looking at the internet as a utility, but obviously this ruling today takes that out of the equation.
That's correct. And something I actually bring up with my students is Title II protections under the Communications Act, which is how the FCC has its power, are just meant to give the SEC oversight into this utility. So we have those protections for telephone lines. Why wouldn't we want those for internet providers when in 2017 an internet connection is on the same footing as a landline? In fact, most people don't have a landline and they do have internet services. What today's ruling does is it just has the FCC abdicate their role in any kind of regulation and passes the burden over to the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC.
When it comes to companies, who are the beneficiaries of this and who does it hurt?
So it helps any incumbent content providers today. If you were to start Netflix today, you would have an uphill battle because you would be pushing a lot of data on the network, and someone like Comcast, which owns NBC and has a stake in Hulu, would want to throttle your bandwidth to have consumers move to properties that they already own. So it may stifle innovation in the future. If you wanted to start the next YouTube, this might not be the climate for you to do that in.
What about the existing companies?
If you're an existing content provider, you might have ISPs bump your bill up. So if you're Netflix, you might be paying more for internet connections because they have the flexibility to do that. And that means Netflix will likely in turn pass those costs along to consumers. The nice part there is Netflix will look like the bad guy instead of the ISP. So ISPs are the big winner today. Netflix might buy their internet from Level 3 or some backbone provider that doesn't sell to consumers. They would increase the cost to Netflix, and then Netflix would have to turn around and pass that cost on to consumers.
Is this going to impact internet access and cost to the consumer?
I don't think it will actually impact internet access. That's a popular thing that's thrown about. I don't think that's the main issue. ISPs would have a hard time with shutting off your access to any particular website. They would get a black eye almost immediately. So I don't think the ISPs are that foolish to take such an obvious move that would hurt them in the public mind. A more subtle change would just be moving from an unlimited plan to a metered plan, and it's something that we're used to because we used to have unlimited data on our cell phones, and most of us now have a metered cap where you can't go beyond a certain limit without being throttled. So I'd say that's the more subtle change that you're going to see in the following years. You'll probably have those sort of package deals, or it might be like 10 years ago on cell phone services where you can use Netflix, but only on nights and weekends.
As far as the content that I consume, that all stays the same. It's really the amount.
That would be my professional opinion. I think an ISP would get a black eye immediately if they blocked access to sites. That's too much like censorship, and they would see their customer base go down and a lot of protests online. A much more subtle way that they can achieve their aims is just throttling your access to particular places. Now, the FCC ruling does say they have to disclose this in the terms and conditions, but we know most people don't read the terms and conditions. And if you have an issue with one of those terms or conditions, you can no longer protest that to the FCC. You would have to take your case up with the FTC, which has purview over all sorts of trades, including the baby crib manufacturer or the seatbelt manufacturer.